Welcome to the Sustainable Design Lab podcast. I'm Brodie, Vander, Dussen.
And I'm Chris Bradley. And on this show, we talk with the innovators, the change makers, and the leaders who are shaping the future of packaging. Our goal is to explore not just what's happening now, but what's really emerging in the market.
Today, we're exploring the future of fiber-based packaging with Metsä Board. They're a Finnish paperboard company known worldwide for their lightweight, high-performance solutions that cut material use, reduce carbon, and keep products safe.
And it's not just about material science. With extended producer responsibility, or EPR, rolling out across the United States and around the world, companies like Metsä are reshaping how brands can design packaging to meet these stricter regulations and also drive down their costs.
Our guest today is Pajka from Metsä Board. Nate has a deep background in packaging sustainability, and he's been on the front lines helping brands understand how fiber-based packaging can often outperform plastics in both performance and compliance.
So whether it's the mechanisms behind this lightweight board, the push towards fossil-free mills, or even the role of EPR in driving adoption, Nate brings some rich insights that you're not going to want to miss. Nathan, welcome to the show. And we're really excited to have you. We understand that you've worked in healthcare, energy, environmental services. Before you joined the Metsä Board team, how have those experiences shaped your view of packaging's role in sustainability?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I took kind of the long way to packaging. Kind of was able to touch a couple different industries before I got here. But to your point, a lot of them taught me certain things about packaging. In healthcare, I learned a little bit about how the consumer interacts with packaging and the fact that, packaging sustainability isn't necessarily just about having recycled material, but also it should be safe. It should protect the product inside because you want to prevent damage and spoilage. And in healthcare, that's really important, right? And so isn't safety, consumer safety, and making sure that there's no contamination for that product inside. And then when it came to environmental services and also the energy sector, I learned a lot about how facilities work, where energy comes from, and that invisible footprint where energy is used, fossil fuels often used to produce a good. And so I got to see kind of the behind the scenes of that. And of course, as we know, packaging is produced at large factories and facilities that require a lot of energy. So it gave me a lot of background and kind of helped me understand the whole value chain. And that made it seem like a pretty good fit once I got here into packaging.
I think within each step of the supply chain of packaging, it's so easy to be like tunnel vision of like just focusing on one thing. And I think that the experience of understanding, a little bit about everything really helps you in that tunnel vision of whatever piece that you're working on. So that's awesome. I think that really is really helpful. You recently wrote an article about reducing the environmental impact of pharma packaging specifically. Can you share what inspired that piece and why the pharma sector presents such a unique packaging challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. So what inspired the article was simply that Metsä Board wants to reduce the environmental impact of packaging in the pharma sector. I mean, plain and simple, we see it as a market where we can do a lot of good. As you may have seen in the article, packaging represents a fairly large portion of Scope 3 emissions in the healthcare sector. I think it's about 15%, if I remember correctly. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, kind of what I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of strict requirements for safety and to make sure there's no spoilage. So you have to use metal, you have to use plastic. I think I referenced blister packs in the article. So those are types of packaging that have higher carbon footprints and therefore contribute more emissions. So what we wanted to try to get through in this article is that, okay, maybe you can't necessarily change that primary packaging. And I know there are some blister packs made out of fiber-based packaging that kind of started emerging, but I think we're still a little ways away from making that scalable, but still a good step in the right direction. But I was trying to focus on that secondary packaging. Well, if you can't necessarily affect that primary packaging, well, why not look at that secondary packaging, see if you can lightweight, see if you can reduce the carbon footprint and get it from a supplier who's using mostly renewable energy in the production. So that was kind of the focus they were trying to get at, is don't just kind of give up because you have to use plastic and metal. Think about the other parts, the other components of that full total package that you can improve on.
One of the things I want to jump into is for listeners of this podcast who maybe don't know a lot about Metsä Board. I think you have a pretty cool origin story. Can you walk us through how a Finnish forestry company became this global leader in lightweight, sustainable paperboard?
Yeah, I think it really does all come down to our history and kind of our unique value chain. So for those people who are listening who aren't familiar, we are part of kind of a number of sister companies that are owned by Metsä Group, which is our parent company, and they are owned by over 90,000 private Finnish forest owners. It's a cooperative. And that's in fact where we get almost 70% of all of our wood raw material are from these small Finnish forest owners. In fact, I go to Finland to visit my colleagues, usually about once a year, and most of them have family members who own plots of land that sell their products to companies like Metsä. So that's a really cool story, and these people are incentivized to take care of their forest because it is it's economic security for their families in the long run. And they're also wanting the company that they have shares in to do well. So as a result of that, we kind of developed this vertically integrated upstream value chain where our sister company, Metsä Forest, takes care of the sustainable forest management. And Metsä Wood takes a large portion of the tree and turns it into building products like siding and flooring and beams. Metsä Fiber sells fiber on the open market, or pulp on the open market. We produce paperboard, and our friends at Metsä Tissue, they produce tissue and greaseproof papers. So altogether, we make the best use out of the whole tree. So, and we also have this really great visibility upstream in our value chain, and we can partner with our upstream value chain members because they're all part of the Metsä Group family. So we're able to make continuous improvement on our sustainability initiatives because we have already this kind of stakeholder engagement, like inherently in our company. And, we became kind of a huge player in Europe, and actually the leading FBB and white top kraftliner producer in the region, and actually the number one importer in the US, because we have just been perfecting this process for years and continuing to lightweight, continuing to focus on fossil-free production, which we're going to be 100% fossil-free in 2030. We're currently at 89%. So it's kind of this legacy and really unique value chain that has kind of set us apart from a lot of our global competitors.
I saw your booth at Pack Expo, I think last year, and got to see all the samples that your team brought. And I was really impressed with even specifically the lightweight board. Holding in my hand, can you help me understand what's happening on a fiber level that really makes that as strong and durable and yet much lighter than a traditional board?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically what we see here in the US is SBS. That is the predominant grade, solid bleach sulfate. That is kind of, I think it's got to be about 80% of the market share. Don't quote me there, but it's roughly that big here. The rest of the world, it's all FBB, folding boxboard, which is what we produce. And the way that our paperboard looks on that kind of molecular level is we've got chemical bleach or bleach chemical pulp on the top and bottom layers, kind of like an Oreo cookie. And that's pretty much what SBS is made out of. It's just that one layer of chemical pulp. We have a layer of chemical pulp on top and on bottom. And then in the middle, kind of that Oreo cream filling, is your BCTMP, bleach chemi-thermomechanical pulp. And that's really fluffy and airy, and it provides bulk and stiffness, but it's less raw material because of the way that it's constructed. It's kind of got more, kind of like I said, airy, more air between it to give that lightweighting advantage without compromising any strength. So it can match a lot of what we see in SBS in terms of CD or MD stiffness, but you have extra bulk and less raw material in that lightweighting. And usually we're about 10 to 12% lighter than an SBS and even more so for recycled board.
And that has a huge impact when you start looking at things like logistics and a lot of different components, even in the weight for things like EPR. One of the questions that I've been thinking about is you source this fiber from these Nordic forests up in Finland. What is it about this fiber itself? Is it the climate, species, or the processing that gives you these kind of unique performance compared to maybe other sources? You talk about SBS in the US. So is there something there actually in the wood itself that is different?
I mean, of course, if I were to put on my kind of sales and marketing hat, I'd say that's our Finnish magic, but it's really, there is something to that region of the world, right? It's very similar to Canada. It's that same kind of boreal forest zone. But what's incredibly important about what we have done over a very long period of time is we have, Finland enacted the world's first Forest Act back in 1886. So since then, we've been protecting our forests very, very carefully. And some countries followed that, but it was it's always been a huge part of the Finnish economy. And so there was this incentive to protect all these forests. And so from the very beginning, all those years ago, we've been focusing on, okay, how do we sustain and protect these forests so that we can continue to grow economically? And as a result, we've got these really full forests that are continuing to grow, even as we continue to harvest from them and use them for paper products. Of course, that's one of the biggest, if not the biggest industry out of Finland. And so we pay very close attention to biodiversity. We practice regenerative forestry. And as a result, we get these really strong trees that have long, strong fibers because they take a really, really long time to grow. You see in a lot of other countries where they're using trees that have shorter maturation periods. Eucalyptus, for example, is only a couple years, or bamboo. And yeah, you get quick turnover, but you don't have those long, strong fibers. And it's even the same in the US. Even like those longer growing trees, they can be a 30 to 40 year maturation period. Our trees take about 60 to 80 years to grow to full height. And as a result of those cold, long winters and this long maturation period, you get these longer, stronger fibers that make the printed surface a lot better quality, and the stiffness is a lot better quality. Not to say that nowhere else in the world can do this. As I mentioned, Canada has very similar type forests, but we've really figured out kind of the match of different species of hardwood and softwood trees, plus this, longer fiber mix has really led to really high quality products.
The material composition of it, I'm sure, contributes, as you said, to the lightweighting capabilities of Metsä Board specifically. From a scientific perspective, how does reducing material weight cascade into things like CO2 savings across transportation, energy, and recycling systems?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we talk about a lot, given our lightweighting and how, typically in this market, for sure, we're going up against SBS and, like I mentioned, or recycled board, and we're typically the lighter weight board. And so this is something we have to talk about a lot. It starts at the very beginning of the process, right? You're harvesting, and you have to think about it per carton too. I think, we do buy per ton, but the savings are really seen per carton because that is what's going to take into account the lightweighting. So per carton from the very beginning of the process, that's less raw material that's needed to produce a single carton. That's less energy and water that's used in the production process per carton, which means less emissions created through production. And then in transportation, that's because it's lighter weight, that's less energy that's required, again, per carton throughout transportation, whether it's upstream or downstream transportation. And then finally, at the end of life, because there's less raw material in that carton, if it does go into incinerator, if it does go to the landfill, it's going to create less emissions as a result. So it's really from start to finish because you're using less raw material and you have a lighter weight carton.
One of the things that we're faced with a lot, there's this massive trend right now of we're calling paperization, where there's a lot of conversion of materials from, say, plastics over to paper. But consumers rarely think about the materials touching their food. And we do a lot of food contact packaging. And I guess one question that we have is, how do you test and guarantee purity in food contact packaging? And how does fiber, in your opinion, compare to plastics in that respect?
Yeah, I mean, this is very challenging, right? Because, I mean, as anybody can surely imagine, a plastic package is going to be better at holding out grease and moisture as opposed to a fiber-based package. Of course, you can put barrier coatings on fiber, which can kind of get you closer to where you need to go. But it's going to be really hard for fiber to kind of get there, to have that same holdout that plastic has. So it's certainly something that in this industry we are trying to work towards. And what I think is part of the biggest future of fiber-based packaging is figuring out that barrier coating that can have that holdout in order to achieve what, or at least something close to what plastic can achieve. And once we can do that, then we're able to ensure that there's going to be less migration of anything kind of nasty that could be in whatever that package is to the food that you're eating. Now, what I would say is that this is a pretty, I would never say, of course, we are a virgin fiber paperboard producer, and I promise I'm not bashing recycled fiber in any way, but we don't know everything that was in that recycled fiber. It could have been something else. There could have been a lot of mineral oils or inks or adhesives that contaminated that recycled fiber. So in some cases, you're going to want to use virgin fiber for direct food contact because you don't have that same risk. And if we know exactly where that fiber is coming from, which we do with virgin fibers, you don't have to worry about anything potentially nasty getting into your food. So I think in these kind of safety critical end uses, virgin fibers are a really good option because you know what's in it. It can be certainly our paperboards are approved for direct food contact, so you don't have to worry about any kind of contamination. And if it's a type of food that isn't so moist or greasy, then you can use fiber and not even need a barrier in a lot of cases.
We're pretty excited about the barrier capabilities at the lab. There's a lot of things that we are, directly involved in the paperization trend and a lot of projects that we're excited to see movement to just opening up possibility of what's something different, what's something new, a different way of packaging, different format. We're excited about that. So we're excited to watch how Metsä, what you guys came out with and how we can integrate that in some of our projects for sure. You mentioned that Metsä Board wants to, is it Metsä or Metsä Board that wants to be fossil free by 2030?
That is a Metsä Board goal, is to be fossil free by 2030.
That's so impressive and so, I feel like, ambitious. What are some practical steps that you guys are taking in types of, bioenergy, electrification, or even circular innovations that are making that possible?
Yeah. So most of our renewable energy comes from our side streams. It's our renewable biomass that we get, and most of it is black liquor, a side stream from our paperboard and pulp production. We take that and then we throw it in our boiler and we use it as production energy. That accounts for about 75% of our total production energy. And so that right there is a pretty substantial amount of energy. And in order to kind of continue to ratchet that up over the next few years, we are looking at all of our mills. We have 6 mills in Finland, 1 in Sweden. And we are figuring out, okay, we've completely gotten rid of coal. That's been gone for a couple of years now. We have a couple mills that are using oil and peat, natural gas for things like backup fuels for the mills. So we are slowly, each mill at a time, trying to figure out, okay, what are some of the updates that we can make here to replace all these fossil fuels with renewable energy? And for the most part, it is this renewable biomass that we're getting from our side streams. But also, what has been a really big help for us is that we are geographically lucky. Both Finland and Sweden have very high renewable energy shares of renewable energy in their energy mix. So for our scope 2 emissions and for all our electricity, we're able to get that from a largely renewable grid. Not only that, but we produce so much energy at several of our mills that we actually are completely electricity independent. And so we actually even produce most of the electricity for most of the communities that our mills are located in. And you'll have to fact check me on, but we produce a substantial amount of electricity for the entire country of Finland. There's an actual number to it. I really can't remember, and I don't want to say something incorrectly, but we produce an actual percentage of total electricity and energy that's required in the entire country of Finland. So we're doing everything we can to reduce all of our fossil fuels that we're using, switch to electrify, and whether it's the lorries that take our wood from the forest to our mills or trains that do the same thing. There's a lot of different things we're doing. In fact, if you happen to look at our website, we have a full decarbonization map and a roadmap and a full document that tells you everything we're doing.
I've been really impressed with Metsä's sustainability story and how you're really using almost 100% of all of those side streams that you were talking about. Can you explain how bark, sawdust, and other byproducts become part of a circular economy system?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways that all of these side streams can be used, right? A lot of it, as I mentioned, does go straight into our boiler and is used for production energy. But you mentioned sawdust. We have different partners around Finland and even around Europe that take some of that sawdust side streams and use them as fertilizer, whether it's in the woods for new stands or for other products, or to improve soil quality for different fertilizer projects that are happening in different kind of sectors. We use a lot of our side streams to produce textiles actually as well. We are coming out with a mill that's going to start producing textiles and to have clothing is strictly out of the side streams from our production. And we're also now getting into molded pulp too. So everything that we have, we are finding a use for it somewhere. We want to use, as you mentioned, 100% of our side streams, and most of them, yes, they're going into our production as fuel. But a lot of them, to your point, they're going to a bunch of different places to ensure that they're used. That the tree is getting is the full value of the tree that we harvested is getting its use.
That's amazing. I feel like that's so ambitious and in theory, and then to hear that you guys are doing it is really impressive. I want to touch a little bit more about the barrier coatings that we talked about a little bit ago. We're seeing a lot of those dispersion coatings and plastic-free barriers for boards and for fiber emerging because of the paperization trend and some other, EPR regulations, customer expectations. There's a variety of reasons we're seeing it emerge. In your opinion, where are we? How close are we to finding a recyclable fiber-based soup container or an ice cream tub or something like similar to that at a scale that's usable?
I think we're close. This is certainly a huge project that we've been working on for a very long time and continue to work on. We do have a product that has a dispersion barrier that's non-plastic based, but of course, we want to continue to improve it so that it has higher moisture and grease holdout. And I do think we're getting close. There's so many, whether it's a chemical company or some other innovative startup that's using some other bio-based material. Everybody's in on this because everybody, I think, recognizes that it is kind of the next frontier, and it's going to significantly reduce the amount of plastic that is used in, packaging that has a quick turnaround, like in food service. So I don't know if I can say definitively how close we are, how many months, how many years, but I think we're getting very, very close to it being scalable on a large scale. And I can assure you that companies like us and even some of our competitors, we're all doing everything we can to be a part of this change and to continue to find solutions that can be applicable to really any application where you have, again, mostly in these food service cases that for soup, for coffee, for hot and cold drinks. We're really trying to be on the frontier of that. And I think we're getting real close.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with some of the materials and the boards that we've been evaluating from Metsä in the lab as we've been navigating this whole EPR landscape. So we have the PPWR in Europe. We have 7 US states now that have EPR laws enacted. And so we're really seeing that regulatory environment is reshaping the packaging choices that our customers are making. Where do you see fiber-based solutions gaining the most advantage? And what infrastructure gaps do you think still exist?
Yeah, I mean that has become EPR has become a part of our quote unquote packet that we're sending to customers when we send them our carbon footprint comparisons, our lightweighting analyses, and then our EPR fee reduction. It's really something that we are trying to push because that is a huge advantage that paper has and that lightweighting has. Yes, over a small volume of packaging, like a heavier recycled board versus a lighter weight FBB, if you're not producing a lot of product, maybe it's not that big of a difference depending on the weight difference, but it's something, right? You're saving some money. And then when you compare FBB to a polycoated CRB or SBS, it's astronomical. These fees are punitive for products that are difficult to recycle. So that is certainly one of our biggest advantages that we've been trying to push for fiber-based products. And also there's the carbon footprint. We have EPDs for 2 of our products, and we've conducted not third-party verified, but using the same process as our EPDs. We've done LCAs for every single one of our products and Sepi Tento's carbon footprint reports for every single one of our products. So we have those prepared for anybody who wants them. And typically, more often than not, our competitors don't have those. And especially if it's a polycoated or if it's plastic in general, we're going to outperform them from a carbon footprint perspective. Plus, as we talked about a bunch, or as I talked about a bunch, our low use of fossil fuels in production significantly reduces our carbon footprint. So these are kind of 2 of the big things that we are throwing out there. The one thing that I think we're missing from an infrastructure perspective is, and I think this would count as answering your question, is I really wish we had more data for what's going on here domestically. I think in these kind of databases like EcoInvent and Sphera, there's a good amount of data globally, but most of it's coming from Europe. And it would be really nice if we could figure out how to get more data from all of the mills here and make those available so that we can have apples to apples comparisons and so that we can be as transparent as possible and help, brands and end users make the best decisions they can possibly make to achieve their goals.
Couldn't agree more. If you find something that has domestic data, let me know.
Will do.
This is a little bit of a creative question, and I'm hoping to tap into your creative side. So if you had to design an ideal packaging material for 2035, so 10 years from now, balancing something that balances performance and cost and sustainability, the big 3, what would it look like? What is it? What would that be?
I mean, given what we have, I wish I could be a little bit more creative with what the substrate would be, but I do believe that given what I know to be technologically feasible right now, I think it would be an extremely lightweight paper product that is produced with 100% renewable energy and has a barrier coating that is made from completely bio-based material, no fossil-based material whatsoever. I'm even talking about binders and pigments that go into the coatings, which do contain at times latex and other fossil-based materials, certainly very small amounts, but I feel like the ideal package is just going to have none of that. It's going to be completely bio-based, completely made of renewable materials, is recyclable, home compostable, and again, has that versatility to have that strong moisture and grease holdout so that it can be used for really any application. And of course, you got to make sure that it's able to have really phenomenal printability and surface quality. I still am a firm believer that, people like when they get a package and it has kind of a textile feel to it that they enjoy to like interact with, and also that you can clearly print the things that you need to print to get across your messaging on that package. So, I mean, I'm a sustainability guy, not somebody who's been in paper for a really long time, but I recognize as a consumer that those are really important features as well.
Yeah, I think you really kind of hit the nail on the head there, as far as what you're describing is what we're calling the holy grail. We've been on the hunt for at the lab. And I think when you can provide a paper-based solution that has the barrier qualities that you would need to completely replace plastic, and if you can do all of that in a way that doesn't reuse fossil fuels and is biodegradable, so if it winds up in the ocean, it doesn't, persist the way that plastics do. That's what I think we're all on the hunt for. So I guess in our maybe final question here, when you think about the future of packaging, what's the one thing that makes you most hopeful?
Most hopeful. I have been actually very, very pleasantly surprised. And just to preface this, I have been in this industry only for almost 5 years now, about four and a half years now. So I think I'm like somewhere between a rookie and a veteran, where I feel like I've seen what I kind of need to see, but I have a lot more to learn. And what I have been really impressed with, and I've been surprised with, is how on board everybody is to kind of continue to progress and innovate. It's kind of this alignment of progress and purpose that I think is the most exciting that I've seen, where we have people who are recognizing where the tides are kind of turning and where things are going from a sustainability perspective. And again, everybody's on board to innovate towards that goal. And I think it's kind of created this really like powerful ecosystem where it's not a trend anymore. Sustainable packaging it's just not a trend anymore. When I first started, I think it actually kind of was, or people thought it was. And now it's just standard. So in just 4 years since I've joined this industry, I've seen that kind of like shift from, a trend that, maybe not everybody thought was going to go through COVID. And now it is still survived that, and it's become standard. And even with the current situation where, like, for us, we have a tough time dealing with the current economic situation, but people still care about sustainability. They still want to make sure that their package is meeting all of their strict sustainability goals. And I think that is just really encouraging for me, because I thought, oh no, we're done now. Like, nobody's going to care about sustainability. It's going to be like it was a couple of years ago, where it was just price-based, but that's not the case. And I think that's a real testament to how sustainability has changed in the minds of consumers, even legislators, but everybody. It's evolved from a political issue to something that everybody really cares about. And I think that is really going to bode well for the future of packaging.
I love that. And I loved how you said the alignment of product and purpose. I think that there's so many things in the market that we're seeing at the lab that we're so excited about. And Metsä Board is a really clear example of that, between the work that you and your team are doing. And we're really excited to be partners with you guys and, really help progress the future of sustainable packaging in line with purpose and product. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks for coming on the show, and keep working on those barrier coatings. I really want that product that can replace plastic as soon as possible.
Yeah, we'll do everything we can to get there, and then you'll be the first to know when we figure it out. But yeah, thank you both so much for having me. This was awesome, a lot of fun. And I also want to say this is great what you all are doing to kind of elevate different voices in the sustainable packaging kind of space. So thanks for having me, and this was great, and keep doing what you're doing for sure.
Thanks.
Wow, that was such a fascinating conversation. What really stood out for me was how Metsä is pushing lightweighting not just as an efficiency play, but as a way to fundamentally reduce carbon across the entire supply chain.
And I really loved how he talked about EPR and how designing for recyclability and lower material weight isn't just about a sustainability move, but it's quickly becoming a compliance advantage as well.
Yeah, and it makes you realize that innovation in packaging just isn't about new materials. It's about rethinking the entire value chain from the forest, if you're designing with paper, to food safety, to regulatory frameworks. It all is interconnected.
Mm. And that's really why we started this podcast, was to bring in leaders like Metsä Board, who are not only building better materials, but showing us how the industry together can evolve towards a more sustainable future.
Couldn't agree more. And so thanks for tuning in today. And if you found this conversation valuable, please follow the podcast, leave us a 5-star rating, and share it with a colleague working on packaging challenges.
Well, we'll see you next time on the Sustainable Design Lab podcast.